The Edmonton Oilers were one game away from winning the Stanley Cup in 2023-24, but fell just short of the ultimate prize of hockey. They're back this year, the best in the West, reset, reloaded, and looking to finish what they started. But is there anything standing in the way of the Oilers making it back to the Stanley Cup, or winning it once they get there?
I admit it. Last year was rough.
Last year was a weird one for the Oilers. They started off the season horrifically despite being perceived to be one of the best teams in the NHL. I mean, who saw them winning only 2 of their first 12 games on the year? As a result, Coach Jay Woodcroft was shown the door swiftly, and the Oilers promptly started winning again. Pay no attention to the fact that their goaltending went from being absolute shit in that first period of the season to being just passable after the coaching change. But once Woodcroft was gone, the Oilers went on a tear, finishing the year with 49 wins and in second place in the division behind the Canucks. A disappointing regular season, but it was still impressive that the Oilers still managed to climb out of a massive ditch at the start of the season and make the playoffs in a strong position. And in the playoffs, they started off similarly strongly. Against the embattled LA Kings with shaky goaltending, the Oilers made quick work of the royalty, winning the series in just 5 games. In the conference semifinals, though, they had to go up against the class of their division, the Vancouver Canucks, a huge rivalry series that turned out to be a much stiffer test than what the LA Kings put up. It was a back-and-forth affair that went all 7 games, but ultimately it was Edmonton who came out on top, setting up a matchup against the best team in the West, the Dallas Stars. And against the Stars, it was all about the star players. Connor McDavid was an absolute madman in the series, scoring some absolutely massive goals. Stuart Skinner stepped up in the final, deciding Game 6, and the Oilers managed to win the series, advancing to the Stanley Cup. With just one opponent to conquer, the Florida Panthers, the Oilers felt like a team of destiny, given how far they had come from the beginning of the season. But they proceeded to drop the first 3 games, with the scoring drying up and getting a little bit more of that shaky Stuart Skinner in net. But then, on the brink of a sweep, the Oilers did something extraordinary. They flounced the Florida Panthers in their next 3 games, winning by a combined goal total of 18-5, and pushing the series back to Sunrise for a decisive Game 7. With a chance to be the first team to reverse sweep their way to a Stanley Cup, the Oilers and Panthers locked into a tight battle that ended up going the other way for Edmonton. A 2-1 win by the Florida Panthers in a tightly contested game that came down to the wire and ultimately left the Oilers and their fans bitterly disappointed, perhaps none so more than Connor McDavid, best player in the series, who won the Conn Smythe on the losing team, a rarity. Chris Knobloch returns as the head coach of the Edmonton Oilers after taking over the team midway through the season and righting the ship, taking them back to the playoffs and eventually into the Stanley Cup, 1 game away from winning it all. It would have been a great Cinderella story, and certainly he deserved to get the full-time job based off his accomplishments last year. I'm just not sure how much of that success is because of him and because the Oilers are a super talented team that got off to a really bad start because of awful goaltending. Knobloch definitely has a little bit of a different style than Woodcroft, a very calm coach behind the bench, one of those guys I like to talk about who really knows how to relate to modern players and institute a feeling of professionalism and calmness. But tactically, I've yet to be really impressed by him.
You're a star, you're on top, somebody bring you some hand.
You should kill yourself.
And Connor McDavid is your star player. There's no debate about it. He is the best player in the National Hockey League, the best player we've seen in the last 20 years. Every facet of his game is just superb. His puck control, his distributing ability, his shot, his execution, his leadership, his defensive play. This is a guy with just no holes who can do it all. And in a lot of cases has kind of had to do it all himself. Yes, he has Leon Draisaitl. Yes, he has Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. Zach Hyman had a resurgent year last year. This is also a guy who's never had goaltending behind him in his entire career, and up and down defensive performances behind him. McDavid is the centerpiece of this franchise, and he's going to be the best player in the NHL for at least the next 5 years. Hopefully, the Oilers will do enough to help him get back to a Stanley Cup Final again.
Oh, this guy again.
McDavid on that top line will be joined by 2 of the players that I just mentioned. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, one of the many former #1 overall picks for the Oilers who fizzled out before they got McDavid. He's at least been reclaimed as a decent top 6 player in the NHL. He put up 67 points last year and 104 the year before that. But he's definitely a complimentary player and not nearly the guy that most were envisioning when they drafted him first overall. On the other side, Zach Hyman, coming off an exceptional 54-goal campaign last year. Really kind of insane how a guy who never cracked 25 goals in his time in Toronto immediately becomes a goal-scoring machine when paired with Connor McDavid, but I'm sure that's just a coincidence. Behind them, on the second line, Leon Draisaitl is the perfect complement to Connor McDavid, where Connor is all finesse, Draisaitl is all power, McDavid's all about creation, and Draisaitl's all about finishing. And good news, Oilers fans, you're not going to have to spend another year worrying about whether this dynamic duo will be broken up. He's inked himself to another 8-year deal, meaning these two are going to continue to terrorize Western Conference goaltenders for another decade. His 2 line mates, however, are brand new. Victor Arvidsson and Jeff Skinner both add a new dimension to that that top 6, but behind them it gets a little more shaky. Yeah, Adam Henrique had a really good year last year once he came over in a trade from Anaheim, but how much does he have left in the tank now at age 34? His wing Matthias Janmark is a smart player, but not that dynamic offensively, especially in terms of his shooting, and I think Connor Brown is just here because he's Connor McDavid's familiar, because the dude basically can score only 1 goal a month. On the fourth line, Corey Perry is still here like a remora, clinging to the bottom of a great white shark. He offers nothing but agitation to the opponents and the occasional goal, but at least he'll get you to the Stanley Cup Final. The only problem is that then the monkey's paw curls and you don't win, but still it's nice to get there. His 2 line mates are literally just 2 people who exist, and that's really what you need when you're a 4th liner in Edmonton. Moving to the defense, we start with the first pairing and the new rising star of the Oilers, Evan Bouchard. Breaking out last year with an 18-goal, 82-point season, Bouchard's on the last year of his contract, and you have to think that the Oilers are going to try and lock him up long-term if possible, because he could be a valuable asset on the free agent market. His partner, Matthias Ekholm, is back in Edmonton, one of those solid, positionally sound defensemen that you never seem to notice until he makes a major gaffe or is unable to get a shot on net. Lately, see a second pairing guy, Darnell Nurse, to take the heat off of him. Owner of now an albatross contract, Nurse is one of the most infuriating players on the back end for the Oilers. He's big, he's strong, he can join the rush, make a lot of plays, but he also makes a lot of dumb plays as well. And they're pairing him with young Ty Emberson, a 24-year-old defenseman with consistency issues. I'm sure that this pairing is not going to drive Oilers fans to drink. Final duo is Brent Kulak, ostensibly an upgrade and a fine guy to have on your third pairing, and Troy Stecher, who is just maddeningly underwhelming everywhere he goes. The guy looks like he should be a really good puck-moving defenseman, and he's just not good with the puck. In goal, maybe the biggest issue for the Edmonton Oilers consistently last year, they did absolutely nothing. Stuart Skinner is back to be the starter, but at least he rebounded from that terrible start to finish with a save percentage over 90. He'll be backed up by Calvin Pickard, who was very good at the start of his career in Colorado and proceeded to get worse and worse every single year.
Oh, Britta's in this?
As I mentioned, the biggest offseason upgrades for the Oilers came on the second line. Jeff Skinner was brought in on a cheap 1-year prove-it deal from Buffalo, and a very good swing, I might add, who's 2 years removed from a 35-goal, 82-point season and is in his early 30s. And Victor Arvidsson, whose two-way play is the perfect complement to those two guys who are a little bit more offensively inclined. But he too, with all that talent around him, still could be a threat to put up 40 to 50 points this year.
That's not bad.
I know I kind of laughed at it a little bit, but I actually think that having Adam Henrique as your third line center is a really smart move by the Edmonton Oilers. Not only does he have veteran leadership, he's been to the Stanley Cup Final before and he scored big goals in those games. He's a guy who's just very solid in his own end, has the ability to still create a little bit offensively. And I know his offensive production has been a bit down in recent years, but in fairness, he was playing in Anaheim. During his time in Edmonton last year, he seemed to have a little bit more offensive pop. 6 goals, 9 points in 22 games is not bad for a guy in his mid-30s.
The Gambletron 2000 says the winner is Cincinnati by 200 points. Why, you worthless hunk of junk?
The Oilers are the best team in the NHL and my pick to win the Stanley Cup. They just have so much talent up front. Connor McDavid is an alien on skates. They have a stacked top 6, a very solid defensive core, even though it's a little bit top-heavy for my taste. Really, the only question marks are in goal and behind the bench. Behind the bench, I'm actually not that worried. I think Knobloch's going to prove himself to be a very good coach now that he gets more experience under his belt. But realistically, I don't think that there's much standing in the way of the Oilers going back to the Stanley Cup Finals and winning the whole thing this year.
They'll forever be regarded as a historic franchise because of some guy named Wayne, and haven't done anything remotely relevant since.
McDavid last year, it's cup or bust. Oilers, bust it is.
That Nurse contract. Oh.
Imagine having the generational talent that is Connor McDavid, alongside top-tier stars like Leon Draisaitl, with only one finals appearance to show for it, which they lost to the Florida Panthers. We need a petition to get McDavid out of Edmonton ASAP. The Oilers are wasting his career.
Stan Bowman. Enough said.